Thank you, Prathod, for doing this for us. Like Sean and I have been talking about this since a long time, and this is so good that you gathered together with your team and are trying to do this.
Cool. So let's go ahead. I see. I think Zach has joined. His name is Z.
Hey there.
Hey Zach. So we were just having a quick introduction. So Sindhura, Jean, please go ahead. Then we can jump to Kalpesh and Zach.
Yeah.
So I'm John. I joined hands with Sindhu and to start the sustainable ones, and what it's becoming, we'll find out. And we're so glad that you all have joined us. I talked with Pratod yesterday for a few hours. Matt and I, we talked with him for maybe 3.5 hours, and it was a wonderful conversation. And we talked about so many topics. Today it'll definitely be more focused, but I connected with Pratod from the Global Virtual Design Sprint. So it was another virtual design sprint session. He mentioned open source ecology. My interest peaked, and I reached out, and so here we are. I know that Matt actually initially told me about open source ecology from talking about sustainability, and I think just talking about open source concepts and these movements that we're building in the world to change things and shake things up a little bit and understand the world a little bit more is really important. So that's my introduction. I don't know if Zach, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. Zach Wills, and I'm an entrepreneur, a startup founder, and I'm currently working on a startup that focuses on collaboration, online collaboration. We do a co-edit email that lets people draft email together real time. And I'm very interested in sustainability and also remote work. And so I'm interested to see how we can fuse these things together.
Cool. Welcome, Zach. Matt is back.
Yep.
So Matt, you can introduce quickly.
So I'm Matt Stevenson. Background in all things tech. I guess I'm interested in all of the above, everything that Zach and Jean have said, and anything kind of tech related.
Cool. Matt, just with
And manipulate the things and answer. You can pretty much ask Matt any question, and he'll be able to help you understand it a little bit better. So I appreciate that.
And I have first-hand experience that in yesterday's call. It was a nice conversation. Matt, I just wanted to quickly, if you could talk more about Bina 48 or RoboKind, so that the audience knows like what was the background work that you had done.
Okay, yeah. So done a lot of work on the Bina 48 robot, most of the software and the conversational AI, so that it can talk to you, and it's something I continue to work on in small little projects. And then I co-founded RoboKind, and I did most of the software there for small humanoid robots that can walk around, talk to people, mainly used for autism therapy.
Cool.
It's where these children with autism, they're leaders of their own learning. So they're building new neuro pathways in the way that it's teaching them. So it's really fascinating.
Okay, cool. So I see Kalpesh, Sindhura, you guys want to introduce yourself. I see Sas Patnaik has also joined.
Yeah, I'm trying to access my camera, but I have to get to my settings. But now I can just talk maybe. So I am Sindhu, and Sean and I have been working on Sustainable One since the past years, and we've been trying to collaborate on different sustainable topics and get to learn and spread awareness about these topics. And yeah, this is a new idea that I came across, and Sean has been participating in design sprints, and so good that you took your time out to explain this to us. And we're glad that we could learn, were able to learn so much from you. Could you guys hear me? Sorry, I'm
Yeah,
having trouble.
sorry, that was
No,
beautiful.
not at all. Can you repeat that?
You know me.
He looks like he's a little sassy. He's under sass pat.
I am just up, so
Yeah.
I'm groggy. Sorry. So I'll go next. So,
Okay.
so I'm Saswat. You can call me Sas. And I am a software engineer. So I have a job. So and then I'm a startup founder. I have a startup called Creative Exchange, and what we're doing is we're trying to connect musicians to live gigs, but in essence, we're kind of organizing the whole music booking and like music discovery and booking market. That's what we're doing. So we have about a year in operation. We started in 3 cities. So and that's where we're going. That's what's going on. So we just started in Dallas um, on Valentine's Day. Was not intended, but that's what happened.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's how I'm kind of like sort of I guess like last minute addition. I'm very interested in what happens in one in a virtual design sprint plus whatever you were up to. Like Jean called me day before yesterday, and it's like, okay, this is super cool. You have to know this, and I was like, okay, so I can't miss this. So here I am.
I'm glad you guys have joined. I thought only it would be John and me and Matt. So just one quick question. So you guys are based out of US, Saswat, Sindura, you both?
Yeah,
Okay.
I live
Um,
in California and Cinder is in Texas.
okay, cool. Kalpesh, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? Kalpesh, can you hear me? Okay, I think Kalpesh is trying to, not sure if he's able to hear me, but so Kalpesh has joined from India. He is in the same city that I am, and his background is into software engineering, more onto the mobile apps, websites, and using the latest trends of agile methodologies like extreme programming and Scrum. Okay, so welcome guys to this session. Today's topic that we have is the question is more about can we build hardware with remote collaborations across the world. I know it sounds a little weird how we can build hardware online, but it is more about the building a premise of what kind of hardware needs to be built, what goes into building these hardwares, what is the expertise that is needed, and we can go ahead and talk about individual experiences. So how this session is going to run is we're not going to add any stickies. You guys can add if you want, if you have access to Miro. But more of the agenda is we'll cover. So we have another 35 minutes to complete this session. So we'll quickly run through what we need to cover. So we'll start with interest for online collaboration. This is mainly for all of you guys, just so that we understand what your interests are. If you can add stickies, or you can just quickly give me keywords and I can add those stickies. So we'll spend another 2 minutes on this. If you guys want to add and don't have access to Miro but see the board, let me know. I can add a sticky. I will explain how this works. The virtual design sprint way of working. But let's first get the context for a common understanding of what are our common interests and what we are looking forward for.
And I think everybody worked with Miro, but you can just put down a sticky note and
Yes.
type inside. So you can right click and add a sticky note, or you can do it on the left hand toggle bar, toolbar.
Yes, so this tool is similar to Mural. I chose this tool because first of all, it is free. Mural has a trial period. You need to buy seats after 30 days. So I found Miro, luckily. Um, so yeah, guys, you just share your interests for online collaboration, what you guys are looking forward for. If you guys are struggling with adding sticky, let me know.
Hey, I don't have edit rights. I sent a request.
Yes, I am giving you right away. So for others who wants to join in, the board is public, but if you want to edit something, you can send me a request and I can add you as an edit option. Kalpesh, you still there? Can you hear me? Okay, so another 30 seconds. Make sure you when we have, I'm not sure if how many of you have worked in this kind of model where there is a whiteboarding and you add stickies. It is easy for physically being present in a room and adding stickies to a whiteboard. This is more like that, but you guys can be precise, like brief or short on adding notes to stickies. It can be keywords, it can be anything. Um, so we will be covering first two columns. One is interest for online collaboration, and second is what you are looking from this session. Feel free to tell me if you want to add a sticky.
Could you give me access as well, please?
Yes, if you could log in to the board, how do I send the chat? I'll ping the board link in the chat and you can go ahead and
Okay.
access it. Where is the chat? Yeah. Okay, so Kalpesh is saying I don't think you guys are able to hear me. Yes, we were not able to hear you, Kalpesh, but I haven't introduced you, so don't worry. Or maybe Kalpesh, you can drop off and join in again. So I have pinned the link in the chat. You can open it. It is public access. If you want access, you will need to um, request for it. Um, so we are 18 minutes into the meeting. We have another 20. My maths is bad. How much? Yeah, 22 minutes. So we have a lot of things to cover. So let's spend another 30 seconds. So I have given Saswat also the access.
I'm trying to find the where to get the sticky from.
On the left side, there is a toolbox. If you can see my cursor, so this
Yeah,
is
yeah.
sticky. So I've added one for you. You can
I
work.
got it. Got it.
So the one way of running a visual design sprint is making sure that the people who wants to participate add to the stickies by themselves, because I have seen in my previous sessions where if I facilitate these and people talk over adding those stickies, some of the context is lost when I type in and they look at it and maybe they change their mind. Oh no, you can delete this and add this keyword like that. So it's better that people who wants to collaborate, they add stickies and enter what they want. Okay, so you guys keep adding. Let's go through what others have added. Okay, so let's quickly understand how a visual design sprint runs. This is more like a whiteboard that you have, and over a Zoom link, you can uh, just connect and be in any part of the world. This is perfectly working for software development like mobile apps, online collaboration, for building out new products. I've been into product management for last couple of years, and I've seen how it has evolved. This is the best way I see that online collaborations can happen, and it is mainly used in product development, software, digital product way of doing things. So how it works is, so this is the whiteboard. You have an agenda. So for today's agenda, it's more we'll talk about the interests, common interests that we have, what people are looking out of this session. Uh, I have kept one section for John to talk about the sustainability and the current challenges that are there. Then we'll quickly move into understanding open source ecology. Many people might not be familiar, so we'll run quickly through it. Can we build hardware remotely? How we might. So this is how we might is a technique in visual design sprint where you start looking at the larger picture and just imagine how we might solve X problem or a Y problem. And that is how people go ahead and top of their head, they start adding their inputs. Once that is done, we'll go to the retro. If you're familiar with retro, what you like, what you didn't like, and then we'll discuss in another 20 minutes. The goal of this session is just to introduce what virtual design sprint is, and maybe more about the topic, which is can we build hardware remotely. So just to quickly understand what a virtual design sprint there are a couple of, so it's like a 5-day session or a workshop that is run in, at least in software context. I can explain it to you. We can connect it dots afterwards. First day is more about understanding the users and their context. So it's more like from a product perspective, what the user pain points are. Then people diverge out and do their own research, maybe in groups or maybe as an individual, to and ideate more on what kind of problem statements are there and what you can, how you can solutionize it. On the third day, again, we'll regroup and decide what kind of ideas each group or each individual has, and then we start storyboarding the ideas, we prioritize it and decide on it. Then it goes into prototyping. So in software context, prototyping is more like a mock-up of your visual design, or maybe an API with a mock-up. So prototypes are just to make sure that you don't have any technical debt. And then on the fifth day, you validate it with the actual users, test it out with them, and see if it is a market fit. Now, there is one piece that is I wanted to connect with in virtual design sprint, and this is very important if you want to do it out of the, if you want to build softwares only. Pretotyping is a new concept which I was introduced in pretty old, but that is something which is finding the right aid before you build it right. So basically, even before you invest into building a prototype and maybe hiring resources to give a POC or some kind of stuff, you prototype, you actually simulate the idea that you had in the third day or the third session, and you just start prototyping it with using a pen and paper. There are many tools like a box, make a box, make a package, and imagine how the product would look like. So it's more like finding the right deal before you build it right, and then you go into making sure that you're building the right uh, product, right idea. So just to quickly, why prototyping and how is it used? Most of the failures in startups or products, at least in software, is more of a software context. The launch and operations, even if it is web well, the premise of that particular idea was not done, not captured right. The right it was not captured, and maybe that's why maybe it was launched in the wrong time, or maybe the market was not ready. Many other reasons. So the premise is important. So these are some screenshots I have got from a YouTube video. Most of these are if you're able to see the screen, most of the ideas fail because there is no premise that is set. 14% are success and 6% of them are stars. And the reason for that is no one is validating the premise of the idea. If they just are running into building a prototype, running into building the actual product, and goes it goes on a toss. So this kind concept, I wanted to make sure that there is one more step in between you build a prototype and how we can connect it to the hardware aspect of today's topic. Okay, let's quickly jump into interest for online collaborations. So across world collaborations and perspective sharing, tools people have experience with. So I'm just going to group some of these so that we can have a common understanding, understand different techniques and ideas, build like-minded network, hardware collaboration, online collaboration. So this is one of the ways like people are interested in finding out how it can be a better way when you can connect online, finding consensus on projects, helping small and medium teams work better together. Cool. Um, so just regrouping, building a like-minded network, and connecting with people with the like mind, with the experience. Because I might not know if I'm a software engineer, I might not know how an electronics code is written. So I need expertise and people around who could help in making the idea a success. And it's more about the idea taking forward. It's not about uh, building things quickly. It's more about validating it. So online, so these are few interests that the audience have added. We'll move quickly to the what you're looking from this session. So connect with like-minded people, learn about your goals in India. Okay, so this is more about my plans or uh, what can be done in India. We'll go into that, learn about technical skill sets, know more about approach work. Okay, so I'm not doing much, so I don't have much to talk. But maybe once we go into the open source Ecology part, maybe I can talk more about it. So learn how others are collaborating remotely. Cool. See new teams and projects. So I'm not taking this. Stickies and asking the you guys to explain about it. This is more about understanding how this method works. So, but these are very valid and good points that you guys have entered, and I think the interests are common. But again, this method of visual design sprints is good when we practice it more. So,
Be curious to find out how other people here have collaborated remotely. Like I know Sashwat has worked with Open IDEO on a project with some a group in East Africa, I believe, but just kind of what that looked like. So
maybe that could be a follow-up.
Yeah, that could
session
be a follow-up.
Of just like talking about online collaboration.
Yeah.
Definitely, yes.
Quickly, just kind of dominate this session.
Okay, continue.
Yeah, that's the reason I mentioned that the goal for this is just to have an understanding, because some people might not know how a design sprint works. So the idea is just to for that, and just to explain what work I have been doing. So yes, John, can you maybe briefly talk about a minute about sustainability and the current challenges? Maybe you can add on what we discussed yesterday.
Here, I think it's really in virtual design sprints, when you're doing them, just really focusing on a common understanding problem. What terms, what I'm talking about, does it align with you're talking? Really trying to figure out what are the common problems, what are the common things we're seeing that we can learn from each other on. So in sustainability, this could be lots of different things, but kind of when Pratod and I were talking yesterday, we had to understand what are the common issues and how does that affect how does that tie into your local context? And what are you trying to do and accomplish in your local context with these perspectives that we're sharing? So I don't have to go further into that.
Cool, cool. Okay, so the time limit for this meeting is 40 minutes. If the meeting is like disconnected abruptly, you guys can log into the same link and maybe we can continue from there. If you guys want to drop off anytime, you are open to drop. And if you have any questions, you can interrupt anytime. Okay, so let's quickly. So this is the context that John has also made sure that the angle of sustainability is very important in anything that you build. It's not just hardware that you build. So let's quickly jump into what open source ecology is. I wouldn't talk much. You can Google about it, but it's more like a social innovation platform, and many people are doing good job over that. My CEB experience, I'll briefly talk about it, and local materials. And so BOM is basically bill of materials. So we'll talk about why that sticky is out there. So just to quickly understand what open source ecology is, there are few screenshots that I have added at the bottom of the Mural board. It's on a high level, it's an open hardware blueprints which are published by Martin Jakubowski. And I like to play a TED video, which I'm not sure if I have opened it. Okay, so if you are able to see, so the premise you will get of what why
tractor, then it broke. I paid to get it repaired, then it broke again. And pretty soon, I was broke too. I realized that the truly appropriate low-cost tools that I needed to start a sustainable farm and settlement just didn't exist yet. I needed tools that were robust, modular, highly efficient and optimized, low cost, made from local and recycled materials that would last a lifetime, not designed for obsolescence. I found that I would have to build them myself. So I did just that.
Okay, so that was just a quick idea of how Martin had gone into building out this, but the idea of taking something which was an industrial revolution 100 years ago, and how the industry or the corporation has been crippled down with the IP rights and patents and all, and how I cannot build a tractor because I don't have the right permission, so I'll have to do it from scratch. Now, if I want to do it from scratch, I need resources, and as an individual or as a small team, I cannot do it. So this is more of a village construction set of a civilization, and the blueprints are open source. So you can go on opensourceecology.org and you can find the CAD files which are required. So there are around 50 machines that are being planned. So I've been into following open source ecology for almost a decade now. They started around 2006 somewhere. I found it in 2010. And it is more about building your own machines without any corporation or a large team needed. But again, it's more of a collaboration work. Why these machines is, as in the video, he was also mentioning that the tractor kept breaking down and he had to have more money. Now, the problem with the current way of building these hardwares or even softwares that are being built, there is a planned obsolescence, which is it is planted in the right building of that idea, and every product that is out there has a time limit. It dies off after some time. Take your mobile phones. You have to change at least every 2 years or 3 years a mobile phone, because either the hardware is old or the softwares that are coming up are not supporting the hardware, and you're forced or compelled to change that particular product, the usage of that product, because it's not built on a modular way, and the parts get obsolete, and the companies then profit from that. So the initial premise for this particular idea, so this is just an example. I'm not saying that you should follow this particular thing, but just to understand the economics of it is basically making sure that there are enough access to everybody, not just a corporation. And again, a corporation is again not a person, which is being treated as a person in today's world. And for that, people who work in the corporation will use any kind of techniques to protect their own interests. And that is something which has a high uh, price tag for these kind of products. For example, tractors in India, there are so many people who want to buy a tractor, but they cannot because you cannot afford it. And why you cannot afford it? Because of the intellectual property rights and all. So if there is a way that there is a distribution, a decentralized distribution of these kind of products, you can build a civilization in any part of the world. So that is the economics of it. This is just a timeline where, so this is a almost a year old graph, but the 3D printer is 100% done. Now they have D3 Pro and other products that they also sell it to commercial enterprises, and they are also using it for building the other machines. So initially, the idea of open source ecology was to first start with an brick press machine, which is a dirt under your feet. You can mix it with 30% of lime and push it into the brick press, and the bricks come out, which you can be used for building purpose. As open source ecology went on, 3D printer was hot and in 2009 and 10, and then they focused more onto 3D printer first, because then if you have an ability to build the parts of the product through a 3D printer, that actually is going to help them progress quickly and a faster rate to build these or other machines. So these are all the industrial machines that are basically needed to build a civilization. So there are other infographics that I have added. You can go through it even after this session. One important thing I wanted to make like a mention is, so there is an aquaponics system which is also built by open source ecology. It's also based on the modular framework where you can keep on expanding the stack of it vertically, horizontally. And if you don't know aquaponics, you can read about it, but it's more like you use fish waste and water only without soil to build to grow plants which are nutritious, and you don't need pesticides and fertilizers. So this is more like a sustainable way of growing your own food, or sustainable way of building a machine which is useful in building a civilization. Now, but why would you want to build a machine? So there can be multiple interests of people. It can be for selling it to an enterprise or building a small community around you. So I'll just quickly talk about my experience on the brick press. So it's been almost 2, 3 years now that I had worked on it. It was not a complete hands-on for me. It was my friend's factory, which needed some expertise on how they wanted to build a brick machine. I used these open blueprints to guide them on this. The only pushback from them was they wanted to copyright it basically. So they modified a lot of things. They took some parts of the CAD designs, but they modified it according to their own will, and they were not ready to automate it using electronics. So if you look out in the current market, there are machines which can like press 100 bricks per minute, 100 blocks per minute. Their machine was doing 10, and that was their choice because it was funded by them. It was their own team. I was just advising them on how these blueprints can be used. One of the major experience of that was, so it was more of a physical way of doing thing, but again, the premise was not clear. You are not building the right it, and that is something that was missed while the brick press was made. And it's their own factory, so they have a choice to make. All these machines can be built out of the local materials that are out there. You don't have to import anything from the other part of the world. Obviously, electronic stuff like Arduino and all, if you don't have, you will have to get it from somewhere. But at least in India, I have seen most of these materials are available, and by the bill of materials that you get. So you can also find the BOM for each machine on Open Source Ecology website. The difference between the costs, that costing of a modular machine and a off-the-shelf product is, the difference is huge. It's like less than 50%. You can build a machine, and if you go ahead by the sustainability model where you recycle, you use most of the recycled stuff, the cost also goes down. So it actually breaks the barrier for a person who cannot afford these machines but has less income to enter and buy these machines, or maybe like an Uber model where it can be done on a shared economy way. Again, that is another topic. So,
Totally.
any questions?
Yes, I was curious. Yesterday we were talking about maker spaces in India, and you said that they aren't readily accessible for everyone. Is that, was I hearing that correctly?
Yes,
So you
yes,
have
yes.
things like the 3D printer, and I know maker spaces are all around the world now, but just you can go in there and use the tools as easily as you'd expect.
Yes. Okay, just quickly, we have run out of time. So if the meeting gets disconnected, you guys can reconnect on the same link, because I don't have upgraded my Zoom 6, so I have a 40-minute limit. Okay, so yes, the makerspace that we have in India, it is mainly into the urban cities. So Bangalore is one of the cities in India which has a lot of techie tech savvy guys, and they have a collaboration. But if you go in the other part of the country, people are not even aware of what a 3D printer is. So that actually, that awareness and education is not there. I have a 3D printer. It's been like 4 years now. I have been experimenting it for a long time. Uh, my purpose to buy a 3D printer at that time was just to like experiment and see my designs, can it do something. I mean, just my to like fuel my curiosity. But when I was sharing my experiences with people, so I was actively posting on Facebook about this, and I got good responses. But again, it's more, if you find more like-minded people for running this kind of stuff, then only it is going to take off, or else it's just going to be in the corners of some parts of this country.
Because I mean, I think most of us in the States maybe learned about 3D printers in like 2008, 2010. So I mean, they haven't been around that long, as I know. So it's kind of it's an access thing, and the maker spaces themselves. I've been to the maker space here in Dallas once, and it's like tools you didn't even know exist, and you can
Yep.
start. I mean, so it's definitely just an
So
access thing.
yes, so 3D printers have been existing for since 1986. It was
Okay.
just when in 2008, when the electronics hardwares were open source like Arduino, Raspberry Pi, and other modules, people started experimenting on it, and then the 3D printer components were open sourced, and that's how it took off. So as an individual, again, so this is the same premise that I was talking about open source ecology. The barrier for me to innovate is reduced because I have access to the expertise, these blueprints, these open source components that I can access. If I have a 3D printer, I can print it, or maybe I can fabricate it in my local workshop through local materials. So that breaks the barrier and leads to innovation. Now you cannot just go ahead and make this machine as it is according to the blueprint. There is always a room to modify it, but again, you have to find the right premise and the right it in your local market or your local so because your intention might be selling it for a commercial purpose or for an enterprise or for a community which will use these machines on a shared based economy. It can be anything, but you have to have the right kit. You cannot make a CNC machine in the rural part of India and expect that people will just start using it because they don't have the usage of it. So again, the right premise is important. Um, Cool. The meeting did not got disconnected, so we can go ahead. Sorry, someone was
Yeah,
asking?
I had a quick question. At one point, you mentioned about the cost being about 50% of what you spend to buy one, like on an average. That's what the cost differential that you see, right? And is I guess the premise that you are building machine for your own consumption, right? Like because like labor doesn't factor into it. No.
Yes, that's right. No, labor does factor in, obviously. So with my experience with the press, the factory that I was working as an advisor. So it was not my full-time job. It was my friend's factory. So I was just advising him. They had their own team. They had their own funding, and they were building it for commercial purposes. So they could add on to it and sell it on a higher price. But the whole premise of this particular hardware concept is you can build Lego like modules where you can actually use the same. So CEV press, if you look at the hydraulics and the basic structure can be reused in another machine like a CNC or a tractor that we use in many others. So basically mix and match Lego like modules, but a working module across the machine index that is there. And that is just one of the example. Open source ecology is not just the only thing, but they have done good amount of implementation, and it is a success for them. You can read more about them online. But so their goal by 2024 is to build a university in US. I think they're based out of Mississippi. Um, so they basically have planned it out right, and they're doing good. So that is something that got me interested. But there are many other options as well. Did I answer your questions, Aswat?
Yeah, kind of.
I have a question.
Sorry, I'm not able to hear you.
Hello.
We can hear you, Sindhu.
Oh yeah.
Am I audible?
I have a question. Quick
Yeah.
question. I want to know if there are any examples that
Guys,
you
can you
know
hear me?
of.
Or did I go on mute? No.
Yeah, I can
Okay,
hear
not hear us, I guess.
Sindhu. I can hear you too.
Yeah, Prato could not hear us.
Yeah, he's not.
Am I audible?
You are. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I think I've lost. I'm not able to hear you guys.
Oh.
That's strange. Okay. Let me drop off and join in again. I don't know if it would work.
Okay.
Cool.
What's your question, Sindhu?
So my question was,